Strength practice 3. So different than practice 1 and 2, a lot of the movement patterns are going to stay similar. We're just going to change the rep scheme to kind of create some sort of adaptation. So when we're looking at our correctives, we're progressing inverted hamstring with a diagonal reach to kind of stress that inverted hamstring, because we're going to do a big deadlift pattern with kettlebell deadlift today. So adding a little bit more balance, a little bit more proprioception, trying to take that arm and reach across. We're going to pair that up with a supine minivan pull apart. What we're looking for that is, can we pull our knees up towards our chest or create hip flexion and then disassociate by pushing one leg away. What's commonly a mistake that we see with this exercise is people think it's the leg that's going away that's the one that's working. It's actually the leg that's staying. And why that's important is that creates tension in that abdomen area and a muscle called the psoas. So we're isometrically loading that psoas while we push one foot away. And what this does is, when we're going to a deadlift pattern and these deep hip flexion stuff, we're almost pushing that psoas into a lengthened or shortened position. And controlling that lumbar as we move relative to that pelvis is a really important step. So creating some sort of stability in that psoas, almost lengthening it to that end degree, and then pulling it back under control while keeping your rib cage down is a fundamental skill when we go into things like deadlifts, right? So we're going to progress that now into our A series. You'll notice that we have the same exercise as we did A1, we're just changing the sets and reps. We're going from 5 sets of 6 to 4 sets of 12. And one of the things that we want to talk about is, how can we leverage certain movement patterns to the most of their capability? And a thing like kettlebell deadlift, it's fairly simple, but it also has a large bandwidth to load up for a long period of time. So when we're looking at deadlift and we're looking at helping improving someone's body composition or strength, we can utilize the movement pattern like deadlift readily, and not to have a lot of variation, and that we can keep that consistent. That's going to be 4 sets of 12 with a 3-0 exo tempo. Same thing as we talked about with deadlift, it's going to be the same thing with incline. We're going to go neutral grip incline, 4 sets of 12 with a 3-0 exo tempo. And I think there's this other element too, when we get to practice 3, that bandwidth to take a lot of complexity in. Practice 2, like, we've got a lot of feedback of like, this is a cognitively challenging program. I'm going through get-ups, I'm having to think about which hand, which leg's working a lot, where if we can just get down to just good old-fashioned hard work, training really hard and smartly, and using these very simple movement patterns, but using them and leveraging them in a certain way that's productive, not counterproductive, we want to do that as much as possible. So those two big pairings, 4 sets of 12 kettlebell deadlift, pair it up with neutral grip incline, just get as heavy a weight as possible, move through a full range of motion as safely as possible. And then we move on to our B series. In terms of our B series, we're going to again use our landline again and use it in terms of a lateral squat. Again, different orientation of that load, holding dumbbells or even kettlebells in that lateral position as I'm shifting my weight right to left. Sometimes that torso wants to drop. And what we're going to do is hold a landmine actually in the low position and shift left to right. And you might have heard us use this term when we do some of our correctives called reactive neuromuscular training. And what that is we're feeding this function. So if I was going to push you from behind, you would put your foot out to stop that. And what we're doing now is almost pulling you down, and you're fighting that in that direction. So in a way, this is teaching your reflexive nervous system to fight that direction it's going and creating a countermeasure. So we're going into that lateral squat where we're trying to avoid falling forward. We're going to pull you into that a little bit further in that landmine. I think it's going to bring a unique position and a little bit better effect, and hopefully lending itself to, if we did go back to dumbbells, maybe the next block, we would have a much better position as we learn to laterally squat and transition to that knee dominant kind of squat pattern in a unilateral position, just in different planes. And we might be able to do that with the posterior lateral squat, whatever it is, giving us good feedback so we can load that safely and effectively and keep getting better and better. That'll be paired up with a power raise. We did trap 3 raise, so taking that scapula, retracting it, and going through that full Y position. Now we're going to go into a power raise, and we're just going to stress the retractors of the shoulder in a different way. So we look at this rhomboid, mid and low trap are really big postural muscles for the back of that shoulder. And when we do a lot of pressing, a lot of pulling, we activate the lats and the pecs a lot But what happens, that scapula starts to gradually move up and those shoulder blades start to move forward, and we get this posture here. And we want to counterbalance that, obviously, with all the mobility work we do before our training session with our cars and pails and rails. And we also want to strengthen that. We want to strengthen that eccentrically, as well as giving it some feedback and some concentric stuff. So we're going to use a power raise, where a Y raise or a trap 3 raise is going to just vertical here. Now we're going to get a little bit more horizontal. So it's going to be more abduction, or AB, pulling that arm away. And then we still want to control that downward. It's going to be a unique position for that rear delt, that rhomboid, and that trap, mid and lower trap, which are really big stabilization muscles for that shoulder. So we can continuously load you up safely and effectively on our big pushing and rowing patterns.